Okay, I've always had the notion that marriage is easy, but people make it hard. I've been married for 11 years, together with my wife for about 17 years. And I knew my marriage was not perfect, but I didn't think I had any major issues until it came crashing down on me this year. And it really wasn't even about my marriage, it was more so about me internally, my unresolved childhood trauma, my unidentified attachment styles, anxiety, self-worth, probably a few more issues. So going into this personal journey of trying to reconstruct my life and reconstruct my marriage, I wanted to go back to scripture to find out what was intended for us in regards to the perfect marriage. And I figured out that the issues that were going on in the garden are the same issues we have today in our marriages, and why men and women are in constant war back and forth trying to figure out how to make this thing work. Okay, let's start. So God creates Adam or Adam, and everything is provided for, but there's something that is missing, or someone that is. So God's first remedy is to allow man to name and tend to the animal, which you can probably say is man's first job. But after that, God said, that's still not enough for Adam, and he actually needs a helpmate. It's interesting that the first thing was essentially giving a man a job, if you will, and not really being fulfilled by that. And it kind of speaks to me today, where men put so much focus on job, how much money I make, what I'm doing, and not saying that's not important. We put too much value on the job itself, and we neglect all other areas. I'm not saying we can't find joy from our job, but if we don't have a companion, then the job will only do so much for us, and we'll find ourselves just either spilling our whole self into our job or overcompensating while still missing something. That's why we have millionaires today who have all the money, have made all the money, and they off themselves because they're lonely. Okay, lonely. Kind of jumped the gun, and before he actually gave man his first job, he said, it is not good for man to be alone. Now, whether you consider yourself an introvert or extrovert or whatever, we all still want to be a part of a family, want to be a part of a tribe, want to be a part of a community. And even outside of a romantic relationship, we still strive for friendships, for bonds, and just basic human interaction. And whether it's, again, childhood trauma, fear, anxiety, we kind of convince ourselves that we don't need it. And God knows, and to an extent we know, that loneliness, and I'm talking about momentary, voluntary solitude, but just true loneliness, is not good for anyone. So going back to Adam, he's like, okay, I name the animals, I tend to them. But there are animals. I can't fully relate to an animal. So what does God do? When Adam goes to sleep, he takes one of his ribs and he forms a helpmate. Okay, there is so much here in one sentence. First, if we look at the term helpmate, because in today's society, there's a lot of times a unequal balance of duties, roles, intimacy, etc. But we can sometimes find it hard to just view our spouses as a helpmate or a teammate, if you will. In marriages, we don't bring our full self to make one team, one structure, one bond, but we bring our individual selves into marriages, and we kind of keep it individual, where we are almost playing on two separate teams. Now, God didn't say Adam needed a emotional caretaker, a sex partner, a meal ticket, a crutch, but merely a helpmate, which can almost seem so simplistic that we're dumbing down the role of a spouse. But by simplifying it, and simplicity is probably always best, it takes a lot of pressure and expectations off what it takes to be the perfect spouse. He just simply needed a teammate, and we should start looking at our spouse as strictly our teammate, or at least start with looking at them as our teammate. Okay, let's go back. So, woman coming from the ribs of a man. What is the function of your ribs, or the main function of your rib or your rib cage? To protect your major organs, including your two most important organs, your heart and your lungs. Your heart that pumps your blood, and your lungs that help you breathe, which symbolically can relate to how we love, how we feel, how we exist. And our lungs that, control how we breathe. And side note, on my own personal journey, I've really discovered the power of just breathing. I saw all these Wim Hof videos and whenever like breathing, that's like has the healthy about it, but like it actually works. And if you really embrace breath work, we can learn how to balance or regulate our nervous system and just calm our anxiety by simply just breathing. And it's the first function of life, the first symbol of life. God gave us breath, we breathe. It's the one signifier that also determines whether you're dead or alive. If you're alive, you're breathing. If you're not alive, you're not breathing. And how we choose to embrace breathing while we are alive can really control what type of life that we live or affect our quality of life. So again, let's go back to look into this symbolism of a helpmate. So woman being a helpmate that's going to protect your heart, that's going to protect your breath. And as men, if we reframe how we look at marriage or look at our wives, that can really change our importance we place on a healthy marriage. And also the idea of woman coming from man, like quit looking at ourselves as these two separate things, but she came from me. So really we're just a duplication of one another. We're not like two separate beings, but a duplication of oneself. Okay, so now we're great. We're in a garden, we're eating the best food, we're free, we're living, we're naked, just living life. And God said Adam knew his wife and she knew him. Now is that just the best life? You got good food, no secrets, no hiding, full transparency, free of selfish concern and issues. But God has one request from us. Do not eat from the tree of knowledge and evil. You can eat from the tree of life. Life is great, but do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Not the tree of good and evil, but the knowing of good and evil. So as we know now, we have any type of biblical knowledge. Briefly, we know now the serpent comes to the woman and tricks her into eating the fruit. And then she gave some to Adam. Now, I'm not going into that in detail right now, but just briefly looking at online, there's a lot of man versus woman debate. And I think it kind of started just from this simple story of Adam and Eve. And even like in biblical spaces, they debate whether, woman is inherently evil because she tricked Adam into eating the fruit. So therefore it's woman's fault that we are in this position today that we're in. And that again, that the serpent went to the woman because women are naturally deceptive. But let's look at it this way. And maybe I'm kind of viewing it from like a personal perspective, but whatever. But before we bash woman or women, and I'm calling her woman specifically on purpose until the end of this video, you'll see why. Maybe the serpent came to her first, not because she was so deceptive or so gullible, but because she was highly intelligent and probably had a great influence over Adam. And great influence in a good way. Okay, now in my life, here's how it would have went. The serpent would have came to me and said, oh, eat this fruit. I would have ate some and said, oh, it's good. And then brought it back to my wife and said, look at this fruit. She was like, where'd you get this from? And I'm like, I got it from the serpent. She was like, what tree? I'm like, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. She was like, the tree that God said don't eat from? I'm like, yeah. And she like, well, why'd you do that? I ain't gonna eat that. Why would you do that? And like now it's the plan is to shit because I guess I've eaten the fruit and she hasn't, and like, yeah. And I'd be like, damn, you were right. I probably shouldn't have ate that. Because most men today will just eat anything their wife puts in front of them on the table. Like we don't question what they feed us. And maybe the serpent knew that was the case back then. So can we truly put the blame on woman? Knowing our interactions, and that again, we had no secrets, we had no shame, there was nothing hiding. Like, so when she put some food down, shit, I'm gonna eat it. Now we eat the fruit, and we realize, okay, like we immediately realized that, oh, we're naked. So then we put some fig leaves on, which fig leaves are symbolic for excuses. And it's not that rather we just, immediately felt naked and like, oh, I'm embarrassed because my parts are out, but also we started to feel shame and embarrassment in front of one another, and it was our first stage of closing off from one another. Because marriage thrives on us showing vulnerability and showing our spouses our most vulnerable, our most intimate, our most barest naked version of ourselves, physically and mentally. And them being naked in the beginning was not just simply, people just don't have their clothes on, but two people seeing themselves for who they are at their barest, seeing everything again, no secrets, no shame, no hiding. But now we have shame. We know about good, evil, and now we know shame. And shame is not good. So now we're walking in the garden, or Adam is, and he sees God, and God says, why do you got some clothes on? And he was like, I was naked, and I didn't want you to see me naked. My wife hates when I say naked. They were naked. And God says, who told you you were naked? He was like, it was that woman you put here. She gave me the fruit and she ate it. It was her fault. So in this point, like, Adam is really talking at the side of his neck, because he's kind of putting blame on two people. He's saying it's the woman's fault, and it's also your fault for putting this woman here. And when we look at the idea of shame, shame is first a very self-critical view of ourselves, which leads to disappointment, spiraling thoughts, harsh judgment, but it tends to stay as this internal struggle from within yourself. And you tend to not want to share with people, including your spouse. So when we feel like somebody is poking at the wound that we created, we get defensive and we fight back, make excuses. We either go into fight or flight. And sometimes we'll try to pass the blame because, we're ultimately disappointed with ourselves. Yes, my audio went out, so different day, different shirt. So we tend to lean on excuses, which is what fig leaves are symbolic for. So then God asks the woman, what happened? And she say, oh, the snake beguiled me. And God is like, oh, now I got to punish you too. So the serpent is punished first, but I won't go into that because it's not the point of this video. So let's go into the curses of the woman. So the woman is first punished by having a harsh and painful labor and delivery. And in that process, she's going to be always yearning for her husband. So it's kind of like a chasing of the wind. So this is deep. So when we look at this process, the idea of woman being cursed with painful labor is not just a one and done thing. Yes, of course, the labor delivery of the child was probably more painful at that point. But having children, having the biologic process of a woman having kids is a lifelong journey. It starts when she has her period, first at between 12 and 13. And from what I hear, periods can be painful and uncomfortable. And they come about once a month because your body is always hoping, oh, maybe she's pregnant. And when that doesn't happen, the process just starts all over again. And not to mention, okay, we get pregnant and the painful delivery, but the job is not done. A woman has to nurture and care for the child years and years and years after the child is actually born. And it can take years for women to get their body back. And then once they get it back, the body is like, oh, I hope we can get pregnant again. And through all of this, the woman is just craving attention, affection, intimacy from her husband. And he's just essentially became her ruler. And is he providing that for her? No. Because he has his own judgments and punishments to deal with. Okay, so now he has to work the soil for his food. And before the fall, God provided all food, all nourishment, and he pretty much just ate from the tree of life. So now, no more eating from the tree of life, and you got to work the ground to get your green tomato, squash, whatever. And he's having to work this soil till the day that he dies. So we're pretty much now punished with harsh work and labor. And with that labor, there's hurt, there's loss, there's pain. And so now we have a woman's body that's working hard to produce children, man just working hard in general. And now we have introduced shame. There's no more oneness. There's a loss of freedom. And now we just have this skewed structure of marriage. God did not intend for us to have this pyramid scheme of a marriage where man on top, woman below, children at the bottom. He wanted man and woman to be on equal playing fields because we were of one flesh. But now man lords over woman, and actually his first job was to name her. So he named her what they call it a Eve, but in Hebrew it was Chawah, which means the mother of the living. And God put clothes on them, kicked them out of the garden, and now they have to go out and make marriage as best as they can after the fall. Now, while most of us don't even have like the concept of marriage, even of Adam and Eve after the fall. Now, most of us now don't even have marriages close to even Adam and Eve, even after the fall. We have centuries and centuries now of marriages that have just deteriorated over the years, and now the concept of marriage is so far from where it started. So now we're just like married to complete strangers. But we don't have the rest in that. And we have the opportunity to try to come back as close as possible to what God considered a perfect marriage. And I will start here in Adam and Eve and start on yourself. In a marriage, the best way to help the marriage is to work on yourself. So you have to be selfish for the better of the unit, of the marriage, of the pair. And yeah, so start with yourself, and let's try to find out what it is to have a, let's not say a perfect marriage, but at least a good marriage.